Have you ever met the connector? Well, he ponders, he helps, he creates, he writes, he speaks. He basically connects people and brings them together. I speak about Paul Solano of PS and All Marketing Group. At psandallmarketinggroup.com, you will receive an assembled group of Paul's contacts and connections that cross into many sectors of life. Please contact Paul Solano at 617-240-4130 or psandallmarketinggroup@gmail.com if you are in the market for a wide array of services. Again, please contact The Connector, Paul Solano at 617-240-4130 or psandallmarketinggroup@gmail.com with any questions. And now, here's Paul Solano, the host of Paul Ponders.
Welcome to Paul Ponders. My name is Paul Solano of PS and All Marketing Group, and I may be reached via email at paul@paulponders.com. Thank you for joining me for my foray into podcasting. It is great to be collaborating with my friend and associate Chalonzo Amos of PodPro Entertainment to bring you some fun, exciting, and informative podcasts. For many years, I've been referred to as the connector, or in Greater Boston circles as the connector. With psandallmarketinggroup.com, I've created a side gig to connect you and get things done. Please sit back and relax and listen to today's podcast. If you are driving or operating heavy machinery and just listening, then please just listen and stay focused on your task at hand. Thanks again for listening. Enjoy my ponderings. Let #PaulPonders begin. Greetings, everyone. How is everyone doing this fine day? It's #PaulPonders here with another exciting episode. But before I go on, I just want to thank our media partner, our sponsor partner, Project142.org, Scott Albertson in New York, in Connecticut, in New Jersey. He's all over the place. But if you haven't had a chance to go in and check out past Paul Ponders episodes, you must check out Project142.org and Scott Albertson, Scott with one T, Albertson, SON.com. And I want to thank you all for rating, reviewing, subscribing, and really just being part of the #PodPro Entertainment world. And who's behind the curtain? Techie Talonzo. Thank you for doing a great job and making this happen, making this really a reality, a virtual reality, if you will. But anyways, I often say it, and it is true. People do stop me on the street. They do stop me at Stop and Shop at Pearl Street Station, Wegmans. They say, Paul, that was a fascinating podcast you had last week. Really, where do you get these great speakers? Where do you get these great guests? And I have a network and part of the PS and All Marketing Group program and all, but I'm also a member of the Medford Rotary Club. And recently we had a guest speaker who just absolutely blew my mind away with a wonderful, wonderful presentation. And we're going to hear from Miss Fern Remedi-Brown, and she is the Executive Director of Sowing Opportunities. Fern, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate your having me tonight.
It's really great to have you here, and you just made a wonderful, wonderful presentation to the Rotary Club, and I went up to you after the meeting, and I said, you would make an excellent #Paul Ponders guest, and here you are.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So Sowing Opportunities is a nonprofit organization, and I guess you seek to cultivate self-sustainability, education, and wellness in rural Guatemala.
Yes.
And you are recently returned from Guatemala. So tell our listeners about what Sowing Opportunities is all about. Take it away.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. Yes, I just came back from Guatemala, and what we do is we work with Indigenous communities in an extremely remote area of Guatemala and provide agricultural resources and an opportunity for the people who participate in our program to develop their leadership skills as well. And we are now in 3 remote villages in the same region called Alta Verapaz in the northeast region of Guatemala. And quite literally, there are no one else provides resources, and we just, not the government, not their government, not our government, and not any other nonprofit. And we stumbled upon this because when the way that we got there is that we learned that our daughter was adopted from that region. And when she was adopted when she was 7.5 months old. And when she was 6 years old, she said, "I want to meet my real mom." And because of my own personal biology, I said, "Yes, let's do it." So little did we know that we would find that her biological mom was extremely destitute and doesn't even speak Spanish, which is the lingua franca of Guatemala. There are 22 different indigenous groups in Guatemala, and the one in Alta Verapaz speaks Quechua. So when we located her biological mom, the next step was that we traveled to Guatemala as a family, and we met her biological mom, but we did not travel to the village. We did not know how very remote it is to drive there from Antigua, Guatemala, which is where we were based and where I am based when I travel there. It takes 12 hours. And through much of the terrain, there is no cell service. So that's a risk as well. And we didn't want to put our children, our youngest was 10, the one who was adopted from the area at the time in June 2015. So we didn't want to put her or our family at risk. So we didn't do that. I have subsequently traveled to the region 4 times on my own. So we learned that her biological mom and family were destitute. We helped initially with her biological mom's needs, her medical needs. Part of the illness that many of the people have there is because the water is contaminated. It's contaminated because it's used for all their needs. There's a river there and the first village. Of course, that presents a problem. We learned then that the entire village that she lives in was destitute. And then fast forward, we learned the entire region is destitute. And now in the third village, so in the second village, which we've worked with 1 village per year in terms of the agricultural project. So in 2023, January, we started with the second village called Salaguna. The first village where our daughter is from is called Chachmeik. Second village, Salaguna, we learned that most of the inhabitants or the leaders of the families were women. Why is that? Because many of the men had tried to get to the United States. And I think we know that most people who try to get to the United States without documentation don't succeed. And we don't know what happens. Sometimes they are unable to make it at all. Sometimes they end up in detention in the United States. Sometimes they're deported back, but not necessarily to the same region where they came from. And because there are 22 different regions, each of them speaks a different indigenous language. And so they may not ever be able to communicate again. Who knows if they had their cell phone? Probably not. So what the women did is they felt desperate until we showed up. Actually, we're known in the region now, and a lot of villages are asking for our assistance with the agricultural project. And so now the villages that we're working with are able to sustain their families with agricultural nourishment. And the results are just amazing. I'm going to share with you, I'll send to you a photo of myself standing next to the greenhouses just 1 week ago today, with some of the folks. In the third village named Sispila, what we learned was that the women, mostly women because their husbands and sons have left, trying to make a better life for their families, but probably not knowing how quite difficult that would be. And of course, risking a lot by probably selling the land that their family lived on. And what do they have to sell? They have very, very little, if anything. But the innovation of this third community, this third village, is really amazing. And when they learn, we have an agricultural engineer as well as a project manager and now a social worker who are working in the region. And the agricultural engineer studied in Spain, in Brazil, and in Israel, and learned irrigation techniques, learned special farming techniques. He even received special corn kernels that grow very quickly so that they could see their results quickly. It was just amazing to see in 1 month that corn could grow that quickly, and in another few weeks that they'll be able to eat the corn and make products from the corn, which is their staple in the diet. And so in this third community, Sisbila, what we noticed was that the women were working together. And one woman who had 5 children and was just devastated that her husband wasn't there and didn't know what she was going to do and had lost hope. Another of the women in the community said, "I'll help you." She also was on her own. And together they built the greenhouse. She helped to take care of the children. And she's got a flourishing greenhouse now and able to feed her family. So it's incredibly inspirational to see that kind of connection. The other thing is that the techniques that the agricultural engineer taught them, they're now applying in other ways. So if they happen to have tomato seeds or squash, those aren't things that we traditionally supply because most people don't ask for it. But they took their seeds and they put them into the ground and used the same techniques, and now they're growing those as well. They're also taking any ready container, such as a bucket, and they're growing with the same techniques there. So they're being very, very creative. And the other thing that we learned is that instead of having a large polluted river, such as in Chachmeyik, the first village, the second village, Salaguna, they have to travel down 1.5 miles of a steep rocky mountain to get to the water source and then bring it up, which is extremely heavy. And mostly they bring it on their back or their head. Incredibly difficult. In the third village, Sisbila, they don't have a ready source of water, except what they learned was an ancient Mayan technique, which they're Mayan indigenous people. And they found a spring at the bottom of rocks underneath the earth. And they call this a well, but it's not really a well because a well is man-made. This spring has running water, and they send a bucket down with a rope, which is not a straight path down, but on an angle. And they fill the bucket up and then fill a vessel that they carry back to their, again, so it's about 65 plus feet down with the bucket and then, of course, back up. And then about 3/4 of a mile, perhaps, to get back to their home to use it in whatever way they use it for everything. So watering their greenhouse vegetables and cooking and bathing and everything. So that's a huge amount of water. You know, we don't even know how much we use in a day. They don't have plumbing. So that's, one thing, and very little electricity. So it's almost like the way we lived 100 years ago in some senses. It's very rustic. One of our next projects that we're really hoping to do is to get water access for these folks, because they need that. They need something that would be much more accessible, perhaps a faucet that comes to their home, that would require piping, and a pump that would deliver the water. So that's a next step, at least for this village. They really need it. And filtration, too, to keep them safe. So,
wow.
Yeah. Do you have more questions?
That is absolutely fascinating. Wow. What a great summation of that experience and all. But tell me about the reunion with your daughter's mom.
Oh, that was interesting. Yeah. So she was 10 years old. So she speaks only Kikchi, and she brought her sister-in-law along, which is her brother's wife. And so her sister-in-law speaks Spanish, and most of our family speak only English. I'm learning Spanish, and our project manager, who is our friend, speaks both languages. So we managed in the 3 languages to connect with one another. We had meals together. What we learned was that our daughter's biological mom thought that she would never see her biological daughter again. And it was very emotional for her as well as for our daughter. I think it was an important reunion. At the end, her biological mom was clearly saddened by it being the last day of us being together. And I asked her sister-in-law if it was a good thing or not that we did meet one another. And she said, yes, definitely a good thing. I mean, I think it's always important for people to connect with their own biology, even if it's not something that you would expect.
Without a doubt, that must have just been a tremendous experience for all parties involved there. I applaud you for doing that and for wanting to, in fact, travel and make that happen. Now, on your website, I see that we embrace 5 core values to do this work of Sowing Opportunities. Would you please tell us about the 5 core values of Sowing Opportunities?
Yes. Okay. I'm going to bring this up so I can speak to it intelligently. All right. Yes. So the 5 core values are doing peace and justice work. So I see this work as peace and justice work because, first of all, this area of the world has experienced war. I don't know if you're familiar with from 1960 to 1996, 36 years, the mostly Indigenous people, many of them were slaughtered. And that was a war that probably shouldn't have happened, but it has to do with the injustice in the region. It was funded by the United States. It was under Reagan and George Bush and the CIA. They didn't like the direction that the president was going, which they deemed to be communist. He ended up in exile, and he was trying to. Many of the farms where the Indigenous people were working, he tried to give those farms to the people who were working on them, and the United Fruit Company was up in arms about that. That was through the United States. That's what, one of the major buyers of the produce. And so anyway, a 36-year war ensued. Some people call it an unarmed conflict because the Indigenous people didn't have the kind of weapons that the guerrillas had. They were they were even trained in the United States in a place called School of the Americas in South Carolina. I think it's changed its name since. But at any rate, so our work is repairing in that regard. So my background is I'm Jewish, and we have a principle called Tikkun Olam, which means repairing the world. And I strongly believe in that. I feel that it's very much important to reach across differences, cultures, and to let people know that we who have resources are willing to share and to learn from others. So that's the kind of work that I feel is the peace and justice work. Creating equity, so people are developing their leadership skills. We're working in collaboration with them. We're not saying, here you are, this is what we're doing for you. That wouldn't work in the long run. We're helping people to gain skills that they can use for the rest of their lives and teach their children. And the children are watching. When those people who are creating the greenhouse agriculture are developing them, the children are seeing what's going on. They're there all the time. Unfortunately, standard education doesn't exist in many of these villages. Perhaps it's been tried, but I mentioned that there aren't resources from the government, so not much there, or maybe an hour or two of school, but not enough. Respecting life, so we're helping people to live, to have resources. The vegetables that they request are the ones that we bring seedlings instead of just seeds, and that's what our project manager manages. They request particularly a vegetable called macoy. Macoy is also called quilete, and in the United States it translates to black cohosh, but it isn't the same because black cohosh is dangerous. You wouldn't eat that. But this is not dangerous. It's one of their primary sources of protein in vegetables and vitamins and minerals. It's something that they grow. And in fact, when I was in Sisbalan a week ago, actually 4 individual women gave me a meal. I couldn't possibly eat all that, but it was with the vegetables that they had made. And one of them made a soup right in front of me. She invited me into her home, into her kitchen, which was, kind of like you'd have in camping. There were 2 iron rods and a fire, a wooden fire underneath, and a kettle on top. And she had put water and chicken broth, and she told me that it was onions and garlic. And then she, in front of me, took the macoy and cut it off, broke it off the plant. She rinsed it and then put it into the pot, and it was absolutely delicious. She shared it with me right there. I have pictures of that as well. So that was just, super. And another, a 4th person made tamales from local leaves and corn and beans. Anyway, this is respecting life because they're able to continue their lives. Empowering one another. It's working with them. We learn from them. They learn from us. It's definitely an empowerment. In each place that we always identify people who are leaders, the ones who speak up, the ones who are the communicators, the ones who will teach other people, the ones who will translate from Spanish to Kikchi. And so they feel that empowerment, and it's a different life. It's a sense of hope. And then community cultivation. So they're already in this 3rd village working as a community. But even though the greenhouses are at their individual homes, they share with one another. They assist one another. They even have enough because they have 2 greenhouse beds. One is, if they choose, to sell in the marketplace so that they can develop their own economy for their village. So those are how we achieve those values or reach toward that.
Absolutely. And you do it so well. And also, how would our listeners be able to contact you or find out more about Sowing Opportunities?
Our website is www.sowing, SOWING, ops.org, O-R-G. That's the best way to contact us because all of our contact information is there. We're based in Malden, and travel to Guatemala.
That is absolutely fabulous. And in your bio on your website, you had mentioned that you have your master's in education and you're an MBA, but you have published numerous articles. 150 is pretty numerous. So I think that's pretty impressive. And I guess those published articles can be found on the Guardian Liberty Voice. And I just applaud you for your ambition, your goals, and just doing great work. And also, I thank you for being with us today. Do you have any final thoughts as we wind down?
Well, on the website, if you go to Learn, you can see publications that are specifically about the work that we're doing here. Also, if people would be interested in following us on Instagram, it's at Sowing Opportunities. On LinkedIn, it's also Sowing Opportunities. and on Facebook, also called Sowing Opportunities, and then /Sembrando Oportunidades, which is the Spanish way of saying sowing opportunities. We would be delighted to have people follow us. And if you have thoughts or would like, there's a place on our website where you can connect with us.
That is fabulous. Well, Fern, I thank you again for being a guest of #Paul Ponders, and look forward to seeing you around Malden. And when's your next trip to Guatemala?
Generally, I travel once a year, but last year it was twice, so it's a possibility that I could travel again. It depends on what's happening there.
Wow, that's fabulous. And maybe some of our listeners will want to travel along with you. You never know.
That would be amazing.
That would be great. Awesome. Well, Fern, again, I thank you so much. And that concludes another episode of #Paul Ponders. And hope to see everyone around, and do log into Sowing Opportunities, a great organization. Again, thanks again, Fern. #Indeed. I trust that you have enjoyed #Paul Ponders. Again, my name is Paul Solano of PS&All Marketing Group, and I may be reached via email at paul@paulponders.com to do some more pondering. Many thanks to my longtime collaborative friend and associate, Chalonzo Amos of PodPro Entertainment, in bringing you our fun, exciting, informative podcasts. You rock, Techie Chalonzo. With PS&All Marketing Group, I created a side gig to connect you and get things done. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me at paul@paulponders.com with any questions. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Paul Ponders. Follow us on Twitter at Paul Ponders Pod. Follow us on Instagram at Paul Ponders Podcast. Thank you again for listening to #Paul Ponders, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our website, paulponders.com, or wherever you stream your podcasts. Subscribe, stream, rate, and review our shows. Your ratings and reviews help our show reach new audiences. Produced by PodPro Entertainment, #Paul Ponders lives within a network of podcasts located at podproentertainment.com. #the new radio. Until we meet again, my friend, stay well. #Indeed.